Can see introduction of microbiology. Earlier also I had took one class, and in that I had briefed you that to whom we can call the microbes, what study we are undertaking to analyze that microbes, and ultimately we had discussed that what are the different examples, and to whom we can call the eukaryote, to whom we can call the prokaryotes, the difference. And we had also seen about important composition of their cell wall. So I had given assignment for that particular class. Assignment is voluntary assignment. I am not going to evaluate that assignment. Of course, those who are submitting, I will go through that one. If required, I will suggest you. Otherwise, it's your choice, because now you are in college. So it's your responsibility whether you want to submit or not. Okay, now coming to the main point. Okay, again, I will say that those who are from outstate, if you cannot understand Gujarati, you can ask me later on, I will explain you. And for those ગુજરાતી સ્ટુડન્ટ જે ગુજરાતી આપણે વિદ્યાર્થીઓ છીએ, અંગ્રેજીની અંદર માધ્યમ છે, પ્રયત્ન કરીશું અંગ્રેજીની અંદર સમજવાનું. જ્યાં જ્યાં તમને એવું લાગે કે પ્રોબ્લેમ છે ત્યાં આગળ મને કહેજો, તો હું તમને પ્રયત્ન કરીશ કે ગુજરાતીમાં શીખવાડવાનું. Okay, now starting to second part of introduction of microbiology. So second part, the principal objective of this class, or this class will be continued for next 20-25 minutes only. Of course, it is not important topic. It might not be in your syllabus, but you should know before starting actual microbiology. So objective of today's class is, first, where does life come from? A question come that where did life come from? So simply many times we are asking that whether egg come first, or bird or poultry. So similar thing here also. And second question, I will try to answer this, that what is the cause of human suffering in the form of disease. So કહેવાનો ભાવ એ છે કે આજનું જે ક્લાસ છે એની અંદર આપણે બે વસ્તુ આપણે પ્રયત્ન કરીશું સમજવાનો, કે એક, જિંદગીની શરૂઆત ક્યાંથી થઈ, અથવા લિવિંગ વસ્તુ ક્યાંથી આવે, અને બીજી વસ્તુ જે રોગ છે, રોગ ક્યાંથી આવે છે અને કેવી રીતે આવે છે, એ વિશે આપણે સમજશું. તો first slide, that people had given many theories. One of them, that is a Big Bang theory. There is a big blast. There is a lot of meteoroids that fall on the earth. They assemble. They are very hot. Under the pressure, UV light, and other conditions, they form a crust, and that crust get gradually cool down, and after cooling, that had formed earth. And later on, some molecules, inorganic molecules, were established. They get assembled. They form some organic molecules like amino acid, carbohydrate. Again, they will form a small molecules that is act as a or starting material for living things. And gradually life evolved on the earth. So this is a general concept, was taught and was accepted by many group of the people. So generally, broadly, we can divide them in two categories. One hypothesis that tells that theory of biogenesis, that is also known as abiotic origin, and sometimes that is also known as spontaneous generation. Second, that is theory of biogenesis. So theory of biogenesis and theory of abiogenesis. The important difference between these two hypotheses, one hypothesis tells that abio means something that is not living. So this theory, abiotic or abiogenesis or spontaneous generation, this hypothesis tells that all the living organisms present on the earth that evolved from non-living material. So non-living material. So that non-living material is actually the vital force for the formation of present life. On contrast to this, the second theory, that is theory of biogenesis. So bio that itself tells that something is arise from something that is living. So this alternative hypothesis tells that whatever living organism present right now on the earth, they all are arise from pre-existing life. And that theory is known as biogenesis. Now, different theory were supported by different workers at different time. So we'll see in brief about the contribution of different worker and their support to this hypothesis. So first, an important one is Aristotle. Aristotle, he had supported, or you can say he had given the theory of spontaneous generation, and he had given this theory around 350 BC years. So you can say it is oldest and most acceptable theory of those time, and he is believing that all the living creatures were created from non-living matter. And he had given some example that if you can see the putrefied matters, so from putrefied matters fleas are arise. If you can see the dirty hay, so for that dirty hay are responsible for production of mice, or fallen plants, that is fallen plants and that dew drops on it, that will lead to arise of aphids. So there are different hypotheses along with example he had given, and that spontaneous generation theory was accepted for almost 1600 years without any challenge. Later on, the first scientist, whose name is Francisco Redi. So this Francisco Redi, he is an Italian physician, and he did an experiment to disprove the spontaneous generation theory. What he did, his question is where do maggot come from? Miss, in his experiment, he had took something and he had find out that meat particles, over the meat particles from where maggots come. So he gave the hypothesis that maggot come from the fly. It means that this living creature comes from this living creature. And for this, he performed the experiment. And in this experiment, he took the three jars. One, all the three jars that contain the meat particle. One he kept uncovered. Second, he kept the covered, but that is with netting. And third, he had covered with seal paper. So there is no movement of fly or air from outside to inside. Okay. Now, what happened? This particular observation from this experiment, what he had observed that flies, those who are easily entered inside the jar and lay the egg on the meat particle, their maggots were developed. Similar thing he had observed that some flies are trapped on this net and they are laying eggs on this one and maggots are found on this net. But as they are not capable to lay egg on this sealed jar, so they are not forming maggots on meat as well as on this sealed layer. So he proved that if flies is present, then only maggots are developed. So he proved that for one living creature, he required second living creature, or one thing is arise only from second living creature. Now, next next experiment that is performed by two scientists, and the two scientists, one is Nidam and Spallanzani. Nidam is an Irish priest and Spallanzani, that is Italian priest. So they did the almost same experiment, but they had little difference. One, that is John's Nidam, that is supporting the hypothesis of spontaneous generation, whereas the second, Lazarus Spallanzani, he is not supporting the hypothesis of spontaneous generation. The only difference between this experiment is what Nidam did. He had boiled this broth, he kept uncovered, and he observed the growth of bacteria. So he is telling that whatever he had killed, then also they get produced. So something is not living that is responsible for spoiling of this broth. In contrast to Spallanzani, only difference he had put the cork, he had sealed this flask, and he had kept and he had proved that whatever material entered from the outside along with air, that is responsible for spoilage of that growth. So both the scientists did the similar experiment except one difference, and that difference is sufficient to prove that that is a spontaneous generation or not spontaneous generation. Next, you can say that there are different scientists like Aristotle and John Needham, some other like Felix Pauch and some more, they are supporting spontaneous generation. But spontaneous generation later on, with the advancement of science, it was not hold true. And many scientists had further challenge, like Lazzaro Spallanzani. And they challenge and they try to prove the biogenesis theory. So Rudolf Virchow, he is an important contributor. He had proved that some living cell can arise only from pre-existing cell. So that is support of theory of biogenesis. Then Theodor Swan, he had also supported this theory. Then other scientists who had also supported this theory. And beside this one, the important contribution for confirmation of biogenesis, it is given by Louis Pasteur. So Louis Pasteur did one experiment with a swan neck flask. Swan neck flask means swan everyone know. સ્વાન ગુજરાતીમાં આપણે જેને હંસ કહીએ તેના ડોક જેવો એક એમણે ફ્લાસ્ક લીધો. Okay, this you can say. Okay, swan neck. So neck like he had took that flask. That flask contained the broth, and after putting the broth, they had boiled it. So whatever organism or spores are present, they get killed, and now it is sterile. Now he kept this broth for some time. So what happened? Whatever after heating, whatever bacteria or whatever organisms were present, they get killed. Now it is not easy to enter inside this swan flask because that is act as a trap. So what will happen? Whenever dust or microorganism enter inside this flask, they get trapped in this band. So that's why this liquid remains sterile for longer time. But if you will tilt that flask, so whatever microorganism were trapped in this band, they get in contact with broth and they get spoiled over the time. So this is the experiment performed by Louis Pasteur, and he proved that previously what Nidam told, that air is generally responsible for contamination. So here he proved that along with air, some microorganism are entering, and that microorganism or living organism is act as a source for production of the living organism. So this is about how life is evolved. So principally there are two hypotheses: hypothesis of abiogenesis and hypothesis of biogenesis. Now the second we will discuss, that is theories for genesis of disease. So here it must be clear to all that there are two parts. One, that how life evolved on the earth, and that has two theories. And second, how diseases arise. So there are a number of theories over the time many scientists had given, and this particular hypothesis were proved, disproved, and ultimately, lastly, the germ theory of disease is accepted. So we will see in brief one by one. The first, that is theurgical theory. Theurgical theory, that is simple, that they told or they believe that God is giving or punishing us for doing some wrong things. ઓકે, આપણે ગુજરાતીમાં એમ કહીએ કે ભાઈ આપણે ખોટું કામ કરીએ છીએ, ભગવાન તને જોઈ લેશે ને તું ખોટું કામ કર્યું છે એટલા માટે ભગવાને તને સજાના રૂપે આ રોગ તને આપ્યો છે, આવું આપણે જનરલી કહેતા હોય. તો એ જે વસ્તુ કહીએ છીએ એ જ આ થિયોલોજીકલ થિયરી કહેવામાં આવે છે. ઓકે, બીજી થિયરી મિયાઝમા થિયરી. મિયાઝમા એ એક ગ્રીક વર્ડ છે, એન્ડ ઇટ મીન્સ અ પોલ્યુશન ઓર પોઈઝનસ વેપર. તો અમુક રોગ જે એવા હતા કે જ્યાં ગંદકી હોય, જ્યાં આગળ મર્સી એરિયા હોય, ત્યાં આગળ એ રોગ જોવા મળતા હતા. અત્યારે આપણે देखીએ કોલેરા છે, પ્લેગ છે, મલેરિયા છે, આવા રોગ ત્યાં જોવા મળે જ્યાં પાણી ભરાઈ રહેતું હોય, ત્યાં મચ્છર થતા હોય, મચ્છરના લીધે એ રોગ થતા હોય. પણ એ સમયમાં એ લોકોને ખબર નથી, એટલા માટે એ સમયે એવું વિચારતા હતા કે જ્યાં મિયાઝમા હોય અથવા પોઈઝનસ વેપર હોય, એ પોઈઝનસ વેપર ડિસીઝ અથવા રોગ થવા માટે જવાબદાર છે. So, in nutshell, what this theory is telling, that miasma is a poisonous vapor, and poisonous vapor is generally responsible for causing disease. And this theory holds true till some diseases are reported. For example, cholera, plague, and malaria. So these diseases are generally caused by the mosquito or vector, and more vectors are generally prevalent in Mersey area. So that's why this theory holds true for this particular disease. But over the time, if you can see, then it is difficult to hold this theory true for some other diseases. So next theory comes, that is humoral theory. Humoral theory, generally that is given by Hippocrates, that is a father of medicine. So what he told, that there is a complete balance of humors. Humors means there are four or five materials in our body, like blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. So these are in balance. Once that get imbalanced, that will leads to the disease. આપણે ગુજરાતીમાં એવું કહીએ એમ કે વાત પિત્ત ને જે છે એનું બેલેન્સ હોય એમ, જો એનું જો સમન્વય બગડી જાય તો આપણને રોગ થાય. તો એ જ વસ્તુ જે આપણે ગુજરાતીમાં કહીએ છીએ એ જ વસ્તુ હિમોરલ થિયરી કહેવા માંગે છે અહીંયા આગળ. ઓકે, નાઉ ધ નેક્સ્ટ થિયરી, that is Pore theory. Pore theory tells that our body is our body has numerous pores, and these pores are in balance. So once this pore get imbalance, that leads to the disease condition. Okay, તો આપણે ગુજરાતીમાં કહેતા હોય કે છિદ્ર હોય આપણા શરીર ઉપર, જેના રૂપે પરસેવો નીકળતો હોય અને બીજા બધા આપણા શરીરમાંથી બગાડ નીકળતા હોય. તો એ જો છિદ્રનું જે એક બેલેન્સ હોવું જોઈએ, જો બેલેન્સ આપણું બગડી જાય છિદ્રનું, તો એના લીધે આપણને રોગ થતો હોય, એવું આ થિયરી કહેવા માંગતી હોય છે. એટલા માટે કોઈ વખતે આપણે નીડલ પંક્ચર એવા બધા આપણે કરતા હોય છે, એક થેરાપી પણ એના ઉપર હોય છે. So this is about the Pore theory for disease causation. The second last, that is Contagion theory. Contagion word itself tells that that is something related to contagious. Contagious means ગુજરાતીમાં આપણે જેને ચેપી રોગ કહીએ. એટલે ચેપી રોગની એક ખાસિયત એ હોય કે એક માણસને થાય તો નજીકના માણસમાં એ ટ્રાન્સફર થાય, એને અડકવાથી અથવા ઇનડાયરેક્ટલી એનાથી જે ચેપગ્રસ્ત વસ્તુ હોય એને અડકવાથી થાય. તો અહીંયા આગળ કોઈ contagious theory that proves or that tells that if some material is contaminated with a seed of disease, if you will touch to that material, that will spread the infection from one person to another person. So in nutshell, this theory is also true for some diseases which are considered as contagious or infectious disease. So that also not hold true for all the infectious diseases. So earlier I had told about the miasma theory. That's true for some diseases which are caused by the vector. This theory, contagion theory, that's false, that's hold true for some diseases which are contagious in nature, but none of the theory is justifying all the diseases. Okay, so all the infectious diseases are covered by next theory that is proposed, and that is named as germ theory of disease. Germ theory of disease that tells that some diseases are caused by microorganisms, and these microorganisms are considered as pathogens, and these pathogens are generally responsible for causing disease. So earlier in my morning class I had told you that principally these organisms are divided in two categories. One, that is pathogenic, and second, that is non-pathogenic. Pathogenic means those organisms which are capable to cause the disease in either animal or human. Whereas non-pathogenic organism, they are not harming us. In fact, they are helping us in recycling various materials. So this is a germ theory of disease, and that was proposed in mid 16th century, and till today it's hold true, and it's hold true, and this is most acceptable theory at present. Okay, so this is the last slide of today's presentation, that there are a number of scientists who had performed a lot of experiment to prove the germ theory, and they had correlated particular disease with the germ. For example, that Agostino Bassi first time what he did, he had proved that silkworm disease is caused by some fungus. He had isolated and he had proved that this particular pathogen is responsible for this particular disease. So likewise, there are a number of scientists, they had proved that this particular microorganism is responsible for causing such type of disease. Similar way, some scientists had also contributed, like Joseph Lister, that particular chemicals are generally responsible for killing of that germ, and once that get killed, then they are not capable to cause the disease. So that is a indirect proving the germ theory. Okay, and the last and important contribution given by Robert Koch. So Robert Koch contributed for the germ theory by proving that by giving the Koch postulate. So again, from this lecture, Koch postulate is an important question, and that is the only important question from this presentation. So Koch postulate, what Robert Koch did, he had given 3 or 4 step experiment to prove the pathogen for particular disease. So he told that we need to isolate particular microorganism from all the infected cases, that must be isolated in pure form. Then they must be re-inoculated and should produce the similar disease. And that similar disease, again from that, we should be capable to isolate the similar organism. So these steps, if we are proving, then only that proves the Koch postulate. But later on, Koch postulate get modified because there are many organisms that cannot follow all the Koch postulate, even though they are infectious in nature and they are causing the disease. So this is all about today's class. So in brief, in today's class, we had learned 2 important things. One, that is various theory for origin of life on the planet. And second, the theory for genesis of disease. So again, before ending my class, I would like to share one more assignment, that you should know the theory of genesis of disease. So theory of genesis of disease, you have to write and you have to submit it to me. Okay. Now, uh, now before completion, next class what we will do, what we can do, that we will discuss. Okay. So